If you feel better walking past someone in a uniform to make sure that someone doesn't bring a knife or a gun on the subway, then that's exactly why I did it. I want to change the psychology around crime in New York City. We're going to make sure we take back our subways, make you feel safe again.
Okay, so that's New York Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul on her plan to now combat violence in New York City subway stations with troops. Here's the cover of today's New York Post. Boots underground. Governor dispatches 1,000 National Guard and cops to battle subway crime. Our next guest faced backlash from New York's media elite when he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times urging a similar deployment of troops back in 2020 to stop the violence. Just joining us now is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Who would have ever guessed, Senator?
It's amazing. It's another bad day at the New York Times newsroom. As you said, they started a 5-alarm fire 4 years ago when I said we might need federal troops to restore law and order on the streets during the BLM riots. And now they're praising their governor for deploying the National Guard and state troopers to the subways in New York City. It just goes to show that there are certain times when the breakdown of law and order requires a troop presence. It's happening here in New York City. It happened with, say, George Bush during the Rodney King riots. It happened in my state with Dwight Eisenhower during the integration of Little Rock Central. It's never the first resort. It's always the last resort. But to ensure the rights and safety of our citizens, sometimes it is necessary. So I don't fault Kathy Hochul for deploying the National Guard. I fault liberals like the New York Times for criticizing me when it was necessary 4 years ago. But second, what I do fault Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, and Bill de Blasio, the mayor before him, is letting it get so bad that this is the last resort. You know, Sandra, 10 years ago, New York City was one of the safest cities in the world. You could ride the subway, you could walk in Central Park, you could walk down the street without worried about being mugged or randomly assaulted. And because of the left's war on the police over the last 10 years in places like New York and around the country, law and order has broken down to the point where it is necessary at times to say deploy the National Guard. What we need to get back to is the kind of sound, on the street, day-to-day policing that helped make New York City one of the safest cities in the world 10 years ago. That needs to happen everywhere.
I mean, to be sure, for those of us who have lived our adult lives here, you've always had to be careful. It's a major city and there is crime, but you had to be smart about it and you had to avoid walking alone at night and things like that. This is crime that is happening randomly, and it is happening in every neighborhood, and it's something as random as somebody attacking you with a baseball bat from behind and you never see it coming. It's gotten that bad. But you referenced the New York Times. We had the headlines here of your call to send in the troops. That was back in 2020 to restore order. It's saying the military stands ready. Well, that headline then in June 2020 was grabbed by Mara Gay, an opinion writer for the New York Times, who back in 2020 said this: running this puts black people in danger and other Americans standing up for our humanity and democracy too. Okay, she's now saying the National Guard, this is March 6, 2024, the National Guard might help subway riders feel safer. Well, if you were racist for calling to send in the troops then, what does that make her and Hochul now?
Well, it makes that New York Times reporter, whatever her name was, look like a fool. But it also makes Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams and Bill de Blasio, again, responsible for letting crime get so far away from them that these troops are necessary. Again, it wasn't a danger to black people in 2020 to say it might be necessary to have federal troops restore order. What was a danger to black people and white people and every other kind of people in America is rioters and looters and arsonists rampaging through our streets. Just like it's a danger to New Yorkers today to have people walk up randomly on the street and punch innocent civilians in the mouth or hit them with baseball bats or clubs. Again, law and order is broken down to the point where this has become necessary, which is regrettable. But the New York Times obviously has a slightly different perspective when it's a Democratic governor doing it than a Republican senator. I find it pretty amusing.
Just reading a response right now from Mark Hemingway saying that it needs to be said that what Kathy Hochul is doing is much worse than what Tom Cotton proposed in that op-ed, Senator. Hemingway says he proposed deploying National Guard to deal with an emergency involving nationwide riots. She's doing it to suppress ordinary criminality she allowed to fester. Final response on that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, again, you get to the point where it might call for the National Guard or federal troops, but you should never let it get to that point in the first place. If you're a mayor or you're a prosecutor, you're a police commissioner, you should have a grip on crime on your streets. The way mayors before Bill de Blasio did, and New York's great string of police commissioners, were able to deploy police around the city to aggressively police even the smallest crimes, because let's face it, most criminals are not one-time offenders, and to keep the city safe for innocent citizens who want to enjoy everything that it has to offer. That's the real problem here, is that Kathy Hochul and Democratic politicians in New York City let it get this bad in the first place.
You know, you'll have to come back, because we had this lovely montage of the media just calling you out for having no clue what you were calling for then, saying it was misinformation to the public and is going unchecked. Even one member of the media saying that we're no longer a nation if we rely on the U.S. military to bring order across this country. Senator, I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.